So today we saw critical race theory was trending. And one of the things that really worries me the most about whatever this is, right? I actually think critical race theory is the wrong way to describe it. We are giving the battlefield to the left by using their terminology. This culture war has been going on for a very, very long time. And you can say the first modern battle in the culture war was Gamergate. Then we see, movies, video games, Comic-Gate, etc., where you started to see this critical theory, or whatever you want to call it. Some people call it cultural Marxism. I think that's a better umbrella term for a lot of what it is. Yeah. Wokeness is an easy way to explain it colloquially. But when we talk about critical race theory, it's easily masked by the woke. They just say, oh, it's just an academic theory and you're overthinking things and we shouldn't ban academics for children. But what's happening is critical race theory is a core component. It's just the racial component of critical theory, which is quite literally an advance on, or I should say developed off of Karl Marx's thinking and the Frankfurt School. I don't want to get too jargony, but it essentially is a totally different moral framework from Christianity. Now, the United States, and this is mostly just my opinions, but you guys can feel free to chime in. It's built on a Christian framework, Christian moral framework. You look at what Ben Franklin said about it's better that 100 guilty persons escape than one innocent suffer, which was just taking from Blackstone's formulation. It is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent suffer, which was just taking from the stories of Sodom and Gomorrah, which I believe he quite literally said. So we end up with a society where you have a lot of secular liberals, atheists, etc., who are living by this moral framework. They don't understand it, though. Over time, we've moved away from the more, I guess, societally enforced, I don't want to call it theocracy, but societally enforced religious views or faith, and understanding why we have these moral frameworks. By losing that, something else comes in. These woke people believe there is no truth but power, and therefore they're entitled to lie, cheat, and steal to get whatever they want until they gain power. So I'm curious, your thoughts you wrote, and you can talk about your book and explain to us what your thoughts are. I think you called it political Catholicism, but yeah.
Sure. No, I mean, I think that's right, that the fact that they're moving in, to me, is proof that there was never going to be any kind of a neutral public square, that our societies will one way or another always enshrine some orthodoxy, some authoritative view of what it means to live a good life, some account of the highest goods of human life. What's the purpose of living? One way or another, a society will enshrine that. And for a long time, this society had as you said, a kind of Christian, I would say kind of a Protestant establishment, a Protestant consensus. And then in the, much of the 20th century, Catholics and Jews were added to the picture, and we started using terms like Judeo-Christian, and that was the consensus. And but a certain element of liberal ideology, which I think our society is ultimately a liberal civilization, has this tendency to be very suspicious of orthodoxies, of attempts to enshrine ultimate meaning in the public square, and so it chipped away at those culturally, politically over a long time, and we see that in the vacuum that was created, the wokes moved in, right? So and now they're moving very quickly. Every element of national life, corporate businesses, universities, almost certainly, obviously, but now K through 12 education. There's not a one dimension of American life where you can escape it. So to me, that just shows neutrality is over, and it was always an illusion. There was always going to be some account of what it means to be happy, what it means to be good, what it means to be fully free.
The woke, whatever they're, they call themselves or whatever it is. They need people to believe there is no conflict. They need people to believe we're just teaching about slavery. We're just teaching history. No, I mean, they're quite literally fabricating with the 1619 Project. It is I would argue it's a different moral framework, but I think it's just a lack thereof.
It is as these things often are. It's a kind of bastardized Christianity. And I think
yes.
you said that, Tim. So, for example, it has an element of original sin. But the original sin in biblical religion is something we all inherit. Mm-hmm. And so, and you have to, seek redemption through faith and so forth. But the opportunity for redemption is open to everyone, and everyone is equally fallen, except the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Yeah.
But so now we have the concept of original sin, but it's sprinkled across different groups. Depending on your skin color, you are, forever tainted by racial sin and have to spend your life trying to expiate this racial sin. And if you're a minority or fit whatever intersectional boxes, the more the better, like trans, disabled, black, blah blah blah.
Exactly.
Then you're sort of part of a holy class. You're sort of you're
unless you're an apostate. Unless you are, say, a black
John McWhorter or something like that.
Candace Owens.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is interesting because so you were sort of suggesting that this wokeness, leftism, critical race theory, any of these similar types of thought are a moral system in and of themselves, and you were sort of alluding to them being a lack of a moral system. I think what it is a moral system without any virtue or any emphasis put on virtue. And so it can be very confusing to suss out exactly what it is. And I think you're also right that it was impossible for there to be any kind of neutrality. Ultimately, what the government has to have is some kind of definition of what a human being is, because you can't govern something without reference to what that thing is.
Yeah.
And so if humans are created in the image and likeness of God, and the government believes that, it's going to govern a certain way. If human beings are just blobs of organic material that happen to have amassed consciousness through some information processing at the level of the brain, and there's nothing inherently value about us metaphysically, the government's going to govern in a very different way.
This is actually really interesting because I think we had a conversation about aliens on this show maybe a few months ago. Would the Constitution protect the rights of an alien? If an alien spaceship landed on Earth and these little gray men came out, would they have free speech rights? Would they have constitutional rights? And typically when we talk about this, people are like, well, of course. I mean, they're presumably people, and it's like, okay, well, if it's a entirely different species of being, then why do not dolphins or elephants have constitutional rights? In which case, there is a presumed definition of who the law applies to, and it's a human being.
I would also say, too, when people get into the discussion on aliens, obviously it gets extremely theoretical, but the question is, are we talking about a creature which has free will? Because people will say things like intelligent life. Well, how are we defining intelligence? I think ultimately does this have free will? Does it have a soul, so to speak, or a rational soul?
Well, you know what else are people? Is corporations, according to our government, legally. And you want to talk about modern day religion? We're living in it, the corporatocracy. Maybe that's what this should be, a corporatocracy, not a theocracy.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, and you were sort of talking about this, but how a lot of this intersectional stuff is really just a corporate religion, too. It helps them because you can look the other way on how they're abusing their workers as long as they're giving money to the right causes and promoting wokeness. They all changed their Twitter bio picture to a rainbow flag this month, so I guess they're nice and progressive, and we don't have to worry about anything they're doing.
But yeah, I think it's interesting that wokeness, you can kind of trace its birth. I mean, Gamergate is interesting, but that it came after Occupy Wall Street. I actually
it was at Occupy. It was.
Well, no, but the thing was, like, Occupy was making. I think now, at the time, as a conservative, I was like, oh, these crazy leftists. But
yeah,
in fact, after the but after what kind of big finance did with the Great Recession, in fact, those demands weren't, now in retrospect, I think weren't so crazy, because the idea that you would privatize all the gains but then socialize the risk onto people, that's outrageous, and that was crazy. But that movement didn't work. And what instead it turned to is, instead of a kind of class-based movement having to do with legitimate economic injustices and overweening corporate power in this country, it shifted to wokeism, which is really, really easy for corporations to accommodate.
I actually think that was intentional. During Occupy Wall Street, during the first week or so, actually, I know a lot of people are like, "Where's Luke at? We demand no Luke, I puke." So our friend, he's like an ANCAP libertarian, I don't know, Luke, whatever you describe yourself as. We met during Occupy Wall Street, and he's libertarian right, and I was very libertarian left. But we both met during Occupy Wall Street in New York. There were conservatives down there, sitting sitting down, holding up the American flag during Occupy Wall Street. It was very much just a general populist movement, complaining about the 1%, the elites. And then something really interesting happened. A lot of conservatives came out against it, and there were conservatives there. So that was, for me, I was kind of surprised. I actually interviewed an older couple, and then the woke came in. All of a sudden, the conversations around wealth inequality turned into racial inequality. All of a sudden, when you started making demands about the big banks stealing from the working class, they said, "You're white, shut up." And then immediately conservatives and libertarians started leaving, not wanting to have part in this, probably not wanting to sleep in a park, probably.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that.
And then we started seeing the rise of the I am the 47% movement, which to me was also very strange. why were a bunch of people deciding to be opposed to a economic populist movement? I mean, I think Bannon just the other day said tax the rich. You know, today he said it. Yeah. So to me, I was like, oh, I totally understood what they were saying. But the people who initially came down and were protesting, the establishment and the elites, ultimately, what I ended up experiencing, I went to the deplorable when Donald Trump gets elected. And I'm there. I'm like, wow, it's a bunch of conservatives. You know, I don't know anybody. I know who some of these people are. And then all of a sudden, some people walk up to me like, hey, Tim, we're big fans. And I was like, oh, really? I didn't realize Trump supporters, you know, like watched my live streams and my YouTube channel. And they were like, no, we were down at Occupy Wall Street. And I was like, and you're Trump supporters? Oh, yeah. Like, screw the establishment. Screw Hillary Clinton. Trump's the one who's going to knock that all down. So what happens is wokeness shattered the economic populist movement after 2008. And now we've been entrenched in that battle where I think we are very much distracted by it. The problem is they saw an opportunity to move in, the woke. They saw a grievance, and they saw an opportunity to manipulate. And I think most of these corporations saw an opportunity to as well.
Yeah, if you shift this to this kind of stuff, you know, as my friend Christopher Caldwell says, where he says, you know, in various realms of life, whether it's public corporations or government, or they'll say like, well, you know, we've done nothing for the working class, we've done nothing for the working poor, but you know what, the new CEO is a trans woman, and you know, and so it's just, you shift power within elites according to like hierarchies of intersectionality without actually shifting economic justice
right
one iota.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.